Namaste everyone. Welcome all to the 6th day on our international webinar on yoga current trends and research uh, conducted by the Department of Yogic Sciences and Holistic Health of Kavikula Guru Kalidas Sanskrit University in association with Indic Academy as part of Silver Jubilee celebrations of the university. So today we are on the 4th day and today we have two lectures. And the first lecture would be by Dr. Ashish Pandey on the topic Yoga through the lens of positive psychology. So I'll be just reading out a brief introduction of Ashish Pandey, sir, and then I'll request sir to start his lecture. So Ashish Pandey is a professor with Shailesh J. Mehta School of Management in Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Bombay in Mumbai. Ashish Pandey ji completed fellow program in management from Management Development Institute, Gurgaon, India in 2007. His research areas are spirituality in management, yoga and positive psychology, and business and society interface. His research work was awarded in IISc Bangalore, IIM Indore, Infosys Leadership Institute, Mysore, in the forms held by these in these locations, and his research papers and approach notes have appeared in globally reputed journals and periodicals like Journal of Management, Journal of Business Ethics, European Review, and etc. He also writes columns for Times of India and Economic Times. So we are very fortunate to have Professor Ashish Pandey today on our lecture. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of our university, and I request you to kindly deliver your lecture.
I need to conclude in how many minutes? By what time?
We have time till 8 o'clock, sir. Okay. So, yeah.
So for both the speakers or for me?
No, sir. For you, we have 50 minutes to 1 hour of time, and then we have the second at 8 p.m.
Okay. So thanks very much, Kavikula Guru Kalidas Vishyavidhyalaya, the organizing committee, Professor Srinivas ji. Thanks very much to Dr. Paturi ji for from the Indica Academy. And all the Sahayogis who are in the process of, who are involved in the process of organizing this, and participants. I'm sure many of you would have deep experience of your practice. Still, you joined this satsang. So my pranams to all of you as well. We are going to look at yoga from the psychological perspective. Maybe because I am a student of have been student of management, and then later on psychology and philosophy became my base kind of streams. When I first looked at a systematic study I tried to do in yoga, yoga looked to me like a psychology. I'm saying like a psychology because not exactly psychology, but psychology talks about and try to understand the nature of human self. In the same way, yoga tries to understand the yoga darshan, tries to explain this self. But the speciality of yoga is that it is not only about understanding, it is also about experiencing. So yoga has the darshan element as well as experiential element. But nonetheless, it talks about human self, man, buddhi, chitta. So that this look to me very similar to, very kind of comparable with the positive psychology, and later on the positive psychology. We know that the emergence of positive psychology is basically the result of a kind of a reaction to predisposition kind of situation in the field of psychology, wherein what studied predominantly were the ailments. And that was a natural, that was a result of a situation which arose after World War II. A lot of war veterans came back to the mainstream, the social life, professional life. They have seen violence. They were part of that whole traumatic experience, and they had to be rehabilitated. So in last, starting from this, after the Second World War, most of the psychological research was focused on addressing the ailments. So we have great idea about the psychological ailments, problems, challenges, and we also have the protocols about addressing those challenges. However, human not having disease is not equivalent to health. Health has to be defined in its own term. And the very purpose of psychology has been to experience and study the element of human self and the healthiest aspects of the human self. But it was in the 20th century, towards the end and last 25 years, the move towards positive psychology have strengthened, and it is realized that we cannot understand health just as absence of ailment. It has to be defined. It has to be understood in terms of its characteristics, manifestations, and the positive psychology as a field has emerged. So it has three pillars. Positive psychology focuses on the positive subjective experiences like well-being, contentment, satisfaction, hope, optimism, flow, happiness, etc. It also studies positive individual characteristics like the strengths of courage, interpersonal skills, aesthetic sensibility, perseverance. We didn't know much about these things till 30 years ago, but now we have fair idea about many of these constructs. Positive psychology also moved from understanding individual self to understanding social institutions and communities as well. And that's where it has looked at the constructs like responsibility, nurturance, altruism, civility, tolerance, work ethics, etc. So this has been primarily the development last 25 years. In last 7-8 years, some major conceptual debates and discussions have taken place around the division of negative and positive psychology, the normal psychology and positive psychology. We know that hope, optimism, enthusiasm, positive thinking have their beneficial impact. But when we look at the repertoire of emotions more closely, we find these principles, and these principles are principle of appraisal, principle of covalence, and principle of complementarity. What principle of appraisal says that this whole enterprise of categorizing the phenomena either positive or negative is not a great value, because so-called negative and so-called positive have their own benefits and the limitations. If somebody says that we have to remain optimist, but optimism always do not work. In certain situations, person has to be a little pessimist to assess the situation realistically. So there's an example of NASA's simulation. So NASA conduct a lot of bad news scenarios, and the success of the product, success of any project depends a lot on how well these bad news scenarios are conceived, and the solution about addressing those things are identified. Similarly, self-esteem and humility both are important. If we say all self-esteem is important, humility is equally important. In fact, more self-esteem or more inflated self-esteem has more negative impact. Forgiveness and anger. Is anger totally useless? No. The anger as a moral emotion has a very important role to direct our behavior towards others. If we see some injustice, we cannot act until we have this sense of anger. Similarly, forgiveness always doesn't work. There is a series of study on the forgiveness in the married life, and it is found that the abusive behavior, if it is forgiven in the beginning of the marriage, actually abusive behavior increases. So forgiveness is also not always kind of the best thing. Similarly, happiness and sadness, the pressure of being happy is felt by many people, and it has become a kind of a socially desirable characteristic. We also see in the real life, and that is captured in the principle of covalence, that many experiences involve blend of so-called positive and negative experiences. After traumatic experience, growth is seen in personality, in the perspective of many people. So that involves, so this is the positive outcome, a result of a negative incidents. Similarly, love is not only about companionship. Love is experienced and can be understood also when there is an element of viyog in it, when there is an element of separation in it. Then there is a principle of complementarity, which says that flourishing depends upon a complex balance and harmonizing of the light and dark side of life. What we call dark and what we call light are the contextual thing. What we say negative or positive emotions or institutions or characteristics have to be understood in light of opposite of those as well, because both of the situations contribute to the human growth. So this is where the positive psychology stand as per my understanding. And when we look at yoga, and when we look at yoga from the positive psychological perspective, we find that it has many elements which are basically different positive aspects of many positive aspects of life. First and foremost is the holistic life goal. It is not life denying, but life affirming, and affirming the life goals in the totality, in a totally holistic way, where the need for or drive for consumption, drive for sensuous pleasure, drive for belongingness, drive for material prosperity, and mumukshatva, drive for liberation, all are integrated. Positive psychology is also reflected in the yogic tradition in terms of the diverse path. Bhagavad-Gita is the ultimate text of the yoga, and it advocates, it talks about the multiple pathways to achieve the long-term objectives of life and attaining moksha. Our positive behavior is also very well captured in the Yam Niyam and Devi and Asuri Sampada. So positive behavior, Satya, Asteya, Parigraha, Brahmacharya, Ityadi are the positive behavior. These are behavior more towards others. And then there are niyamas, Shauch, Tap, Santosh, Swadhyay. This is the behavior more inwardly directed. Both the types of positive behavior are there in the yogic tradition. Positive characteristics. are very well captured in the Daivi Sampada and Asuri Sampadas. In the Daivi Sampada particularly, and it is important to have the concept validity. So the Asuri Sampadas are also identified. Abhayam, Sattva, Sanshuddhi, Jnana, Yoga, Vyavasthiti, Dhanam, Damascha, Yagyascha, Swadhyaya, Tapa, Arjavam. All these are the Daivi Sampadas, very well identified, and they are attributed to this. The source of these positive characteristics are attributed to those states which are subtler than even emotions. So, Nirdvand, Nishchal, and these are the such 6 states are identified in Bhagavad Gita, from where these 24 Devi Sampadas emerge. Yoga talks about positive experience in terms of different aspect of Samadhi, Sampragyat and Sampragyat Samadhi. Positive experience also in the social situation. So Brahma Vihar is the positive experience, and combined with the positive behavior, very well described and very well captured in the yoga. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. These are experiences as well as the behavior. Then we have positive events as in the yogic tradition. Positive events are 16 there are many examples. I can take one example like 16 sanskars or yajnas. If we take very broad definition of yoga given in Bhagavad Gita, we can see yoga and sanskar as positive events. And yoga also talks about positive institutions. Family is a positive institution. Pathshala is a positive institution. A family is a positive institution because it is not in the yogic tradition. Family is not the marriage is not consumed. Marriage is a sacred process which is not limited to the biological man and women. It is an institution which has the responsibility to take care of brahmacharya, vanaprastha, and sannyas ashram. So grahastha is an ashram, and which has a responsibility to take care of all 3 ashram. And if we look at the sutras which are recited during marriage, it conveys this idea very beautifully. Yoga also has amazing ideals in terms of the positive society. In fact, yam and niyam are the foundation for the positive society. So we can look at some of these examples, and I can share afterward some of the research work which we have conducted in IIT Bombay in terms of exploring and examining the connections of positive psychology in yoga. So the first aspect of the positive psychology in the yogic tradition is the holistic life goals. Dhriyate lokan anen dharati lokam va. That which upholds, that which has to be upheld. Both this is dharma, and that is the first objective. Abhyuday and nishreyas, social development and spiritual evolution. That yatobhyus, that which causes, that which leads to abhyuday as well as shreyas siddhi, sadharma. That's what is Vaisheshik Sutra explains. And along with artha, along with dharma, we have worldly wealth, material wealth, psychological satisfaction, artha as a valid life goal, along with calm, which is more pleasure of the senses and the psychological needs. Artha is more like a social need, and calm is more like psychological needs. These both are connected, and these both are considered equally valid and important to be pursued in human life along with moksha. So you can see that 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 principle of complementarity, dualistic nature of emotions, and principles of appraisal, principle of covalence, these are very well captured in the in many of the yogic concepts. And one example is the Purushartha concept. One more debate in the positive psychology is that this distinction of eudaimonic and hedonistic pleasure is an artificial thing. What we call eudaimonic pleasure also gives a sensuous pleasure, also gives a mental satisfaction. So in that way, it is similar to hedonistic pleasure, and that distinction, which is like few centuries old, is now seriously questioned in the positive psychology literature. But if we look at the yogic literature, this distinction anyway was never considered, and the life goal were always holistic and integral in nature. We also embrace all emotions, all rasas are there, and we embrace all emotions, and all are considered to be equally important. There is not much distinction. Then there is an integral perspective of the so-called negative and positive emotions. The important thing is we should be able to experience this, but after experiencing this, we should be able to come back to the Shantaras. So emotions are also very well integrated, and they are understood in a holistic way in the yogic tradition. Then comes our another example of positive events. We can take only few examples here: Garbhadhan Sanskar, or Chudakaran Sanskar, or Upanayan Sanskar. These are the sanskars, and sanskars are the positive events. One example we can take is of the Garbhadhan Sanskar. So in the Garbhadhan Sanskar, it is performed at the proper time when couple is physically fit and it is healthy, in the healthy condition, when they knew each other's heart and had intense desire for possessing a child. So you can sense that how much human life is valued, and when you are, so there is a process to prepare your mind, body, and the social ambience before conceiving the child. So concentrated towards the art of procreation, and pure and congenial atmosphere was produced. That is the whole thought behind the Garbhadhan Sanskar. Take example of Upanayan Sanskar, which is an educational sanskar performed the great cultural furnace where emotions, desire, and will of boy are melted. This is the stage where boy is introduced to his social self. So we can look at that yogic tradition is rich not only with the positive emotions, positive experience, but those positive experience and emotions are beautifully institutionalized in the form of events, in the form of institutions, in the form of even governance. That's what we are going to look at. Very rarely in the world we can see a definition of good governance where not only power is considered, not only politics is considered, but the spirituality is also considered. So this famous sutra of Chanakya, Sukhasya Moolam Dharma, Dharmasya Moolam Artha, Arthasya Moolam Rajyam, Rajyasya Moolam Indriya Jaya, Indriya Jayasya Moolam Vinaya, Vinayasya Moolam Vridhopa Seva, Vridhopa Sevaya Vijnanam, Vijnanenam Atmanam Sampadyet. These Sampaditatma Jitatman Bhavati, Jitatma Sarvarthe Sanyujyate. Jitatma is preparing Jitatma. Jitatma is the ideal for the governance. It is the ultimate objective and achievement of the governance, and it includes Indriya Jaya. It includes Dharma. So the concept of positive governance as explained in the, as mentioned by Chanakya, has many of those elements which are actually the major pursuits of the yoga practices, and these are also major questions of the yoga darshan. Indriya Jaya, that is the yogic pursuit. Jitatma is a yogic objective. So we can see that we have a holistic perspective, which is now psychology is awakening to, and positive, so-called the positive psychology is awakening to, is very well integrated in our yogic tradition. And not only integrated, this has well institutionalized as well. So there is a need to look at our traditions from the positive psychological perspective and see how this traditional wisdom can enrich the literature of positive psychology, positive sociology, etc. If we look at how the positive psychology field has evolved, we need to look at the special issue of American Psychologist, which was published in 2002, which was published in 2000, which had several articles on the positive psychology. In response to that issue, Roger Walsh has written that he mentioned that how happy he was to look at this kind of issue, but at the same time he wrote that I feel compelled to point to an unfortunate gap. The issue is ethnocentric and lacks attention to or even mention of non-Western psychologies and therapies, as well as the field of transpersonal psychology. So the very first issue was criticized, and this criticism is published in the same journal, where it is mentioned that there are certain Asian psychologies, not only they have sophisticated system with effective techniques like meditation and yoga being best known, but also focus specifically on the positive well-being and exceptional development. So this was the quote from the Walsh's response to this this special issue, and this appeared in the very next issue. But if we look at the number of citations as of now, Seligman's 2005 paper, which and Seligman was the editor. Seligman was the editor of the of that special issue. Their paper on the introduction and the progress of positive psychology has 7,500 citations, and Walsh had, till the last count few days ago, had 45 citations. Though what Walsh has said is worth pursuing, it is very important, because not only to bring out the importance and the power of the of our tradition, but also it has a possibility, if we pursue this thought of Walsh, mentioned by Walsh, we have opportunity to enrich the field of psychology as well. So this is my humble request to the scholars, and this is the event organized by Kavi Kulguru University, Sanskrit University. So I'm sure there must be some scholars, young scholars in the audience. Please study yoga, but please do not study yoga in order to validate yoga and use the constructs developed in the contemporary fields to validate the relevance of yoga. That is important. I am not saying that is not worth pursuing a goal, but there's a lot of work already happened. There's a lot of research in physiology, in the neurobiology, in the neurosciences, in the medical fields, which very well establish that yoga results into, it leads to well-being. However, we need to research yoga to see how yogic insights can enrich positive psychology, can enrich medical science, can enrich science of cognition or neurosciences. Because there are many insights. If we pursue and build on those, if we articulate those insights in the contemporary language, we should not doubt that that kind of articulation, of course, supported by empirical evidences, can contribute to the so-called modern and contemporary fields of knowledge. In fact, Indian psychology by nature is positive psychology. And these are some of the quotes of Swami Vivekananda, who draw from the tradition of Vedanta and says that Vedanta recognizes no sin, it only recognizes error. And the greatest error, says the Vedanta, is to say that you are weak and you are a sinner, a miserable creature, and that you have no power and you cannot do this or that. No man becomes purer and purer. It is a matter of greater manifestation. The veil drops away and the native purity of the soul begins to manifest itself. Everything is ours already in finite purity, freedom, love, power. So these quotes of Vedanta beautifully put up that the very basic, the very essence of Indian psychology is positive in nature. So taking a clue from these ideas, we conducted few studies, and I will be sharing some of those which are already published in globally reputed journals. It is thanks to my mentors and thanks to my collaborators, very bright PhD scholars who chose to work with me. We could carry out this work. Most of all the three studies which I am going to share about have two phases. Phase number one is a survey-based study, and that is conducted to test the theoretically derived model from the positive psychological mechanism. So we identify the positive psychological mechanism and whether this leads to that and that connection amongst the variables, and to test that we conducted survey-based research. Survey-based studies, and that was the best design to do the model testing. Then in the second phase, all the studies were having experiment. These experiments were very close to randomized control trial. They were not blind randomized control, because control group and experiment group both were active. Same course was offered to the experiment group and control group, but slightly different one intervention. So in experiment group, we conducted yoga. In the control group, we used more swadhyaya-based interventions, reading and discussion-based interventions. So in these experiment studies, the experiment group, the control group was the active control. So survey followed by the survey to test the model, to validate the model, to validate the psychological mechanism which we are going to put forth as a positive psychological mechanism, and experiment were about the yoga intervention. So first study was where we looked at the role of mindfulness on moral reasoning. Moral reasoning is a very interesting construct because it is at the foundation of ethical behavior. If people have a moral reasoning, they are more likely to behave ethically. Moral reasoning operates at 6 levels: harming or seeking benefit, avoiding harm or seeking benefit, following the rule, following the norms of the group, or following the law of land. These are the 4. And 5th one is following the core values of life and having the, or 6th is the operating from the universalist perspective. What is the meaning of that? Following the core values of life, like truth, beauty, and goodness. And last one is where I evaluate my act from the in the backdrop of the parameter that if everybody start behaving in that way, in that same situation, will world be a better place? So these are the 6 levels of moral reasonings. We looked at what aspect of yoga can impact moral reasoning. Our hypothesis was that by practicing yoga, we develop this capability of mindfulness, because we have to perform the yogasanas and the pranayam in a mindful way. We have to give attention to this while practicing. So naturally, it results into the mindfulness, and that increases compassion towards others, because when I am more mindful, it is more likely that I can experience the pain of others. And if I can experience the pain of others, I am more likely to put in effort, conscious effort, to relieve the pain of others. So that's why it was hypothesized that the compassion will go up and egocentric bias come down. I need it, that's why I will hoard it. I like it, so I should possess it. This kind of thinking is captured in the egocentric bias. So egocentric bias comes down, compassion goes up through this mechanism. And we did the all mediation analysis and all that you can look at in the numbers. And this is the paper published in the Business Ethics European Review that is available publicly. So through this mechanism, moral reasoning increases. And first, the model was, first the survey study was conducted to test this model, and then experiment was conducted to see whether pre and post interventions, results and readings change or not according to this model, and it happened. The second study I wish to share about is about identifying the connecting variables of positive psychology and yoga practices. So after looking at the literature, we hypothesized that self-transcendence is already a variable in the literature, and subjective vitality. Both have, these are the 2 variables in psychology which are likely to affect, which will enhance with the yogic practices. So what connects yoga and positive psychology are these 2 variables. That was our hypothesis. And if these 2 things increase, then what happens? That will result into enhancement in the psychological capital. Psychological capital is the combination of 4 variables: hope, efficacy, optimism, and resilience. And when the psychological capital increases, altruistic behavior also increases. So we collected data about the altruistic behavior from the colleagues of the participants, and psychological capital data was collected from the participants themselves, and the self-transcendence and subjective vitality data was also collected. First, we tested the model, and then we introduced the experiment study. We conducted experiment, and we found that yoga practices actually enhance the psychological capital by enhancing self-transcendence and subjective vitality. These are all 6 weeks experiment. These are not very long experiments, but we wanted to actually demonstrate, first test and then demonstrate that yoga can be introduced in the colleges, in the universities, as part of the regular courses. We need not to, all these experiments were conducted in the real classroom as part of a course. So the protocol, which is given in this paper, Journal of Business Ethics, the protocol is given in this paper, this was such a protocol which could be followed in the classroom, in the normal classroom which has chair and table. There also that protocol, yoga protocol, can be followed, and that was used as the intervention. So our idea was not only to connect the positive psychology, demonstrate that yoga is ultimate positive psychology, because that is the intervention to enhance the positive psychology, and these things can be conducted in the offices and can be conducted in the classroom as part of the regular course. And that's why, because the HERO is the acronym for the psychological capital, that's why the title of the slide is how yoga can make you hero. Another study I wish to share is about the engagement, multitasking, preference, cognitive ability, and energy. This is an interesting genesis. It has an interesting genesis because when we observed our student, we found that as the semester progresses, their engagement in the course actually come down. So what may prevent the fall in the engagement of the students in the courses? That's what we wanted to examine. And when we studied this phenomena more closely, we realized that it is the multitasking which is required in a typical MBA program, and because of that, people feel tired, and the energy dissipation takes place. If we introduce the yogic practice, most likely we can prevent the energy dissipation, and that can result into more engagement of the students. But the next question was, will the cognitive ability of student not affect this relationship? So we added cognitive ability also as a variable. What we found is that if a student having higher cognitive ability, even having higher cognitive ability, if the person is not practicing yoga, the likelihood of him or her getting into multitasking becomes higher, and as a result, they end up dissipating more energy, and they do not become more effective by doing multitasking. Actually, many other separate studies have anyways demonstrated that multitasking doesn't make you more effective. Best thing is you complete one task, then move to the next task. Where yoga helps is transitioning from one task to another. When we are not managing our energies through the interventions like yoga, after completing one task, we start meandering, we start wasting some time, we lose out on time and attention. Yoga can help to transition from one task to another task, and in this way it prevents the multitasking. We keep thinking about the multitasking. What we found that even the person having lower cognitive ability, if the person performs yoga, it practices yoga, it results into less multitasking, it increases energy, and that result into more engagement. So there is a great need to look at yoga from the positive psychological angle. We really do not know much about this connection yet. So self-transcendence, Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, these are very socially relevant variables, and these are the basis of social healing, organizational healing. These are the basis of the harmony in society. That is one field of research, very fruitful research. Young scholars can pursue that. The impact of yoga on Maitri, Karuna, Mudita through self-transcendence is a very strong proposition which needs some validation, which is waiting to be examined. Till now, yoga research is conducted into so-called scientific paradigm, but yoga can bring a different scientific paradigm, different methodological advances as well. Meditative research, Professor Subhash Sharma wrote many years ago about this is now people, now it is getting attention. So meditative research, that research which is deep, which deeply involves the researcher himself or herself. These kind of researches are anyway being conducted in the yogic tradition. How can these research methods can be brought into social sciences, can be brought into psychological research? And that will be the real contribution of the yoga to the contemporary research method stream. If we consider science like a positivist science, which is based on a linear logic, which is based on cause and effect, the strict boundaries of cause and effect, which doesn't recognizes a phenomena of emergence, covariance, which doesn't recognizes the role of the subject and involvement of the role of the researchers and the position of researcher, the potential of researcher to change the phenomena in with very presence of him or her, then this is a limited science. So you can help in expanding the definition of science as well. It can make us see things beyond the linear logic. It can make us see things where this individuality, it may be necessary to understand few things, to carry out some work, but may not remain a necessity. May be necessary, but it may not remain necessary. That experience of systems thinking says that everything is made up of a smaller system and part of the bigger system. One way of systems thinking, one way of saying, making some statement about the system thinking is that it recognizes that everything in the world is in some way connected to everything else. Though for the study's sake, we need to draw the system boundary, but in reality, in the world, there are no boundaries. Logically, we all know this. But until we experience it, we cannot behave with the world as if we are deeply connected beings. And that experience can come only through yoga. It cannot come by conceptualization. It cannot come by logic. It can come only with the practice. So yoga can be the source of not only new concepts, not only the discovering new psychological pathways, it can help in understanding the ways of social transformation. It can help in developing new methodological tools, epistemic tools. It can help in expanding of the definition of science itself and realizations of system thinking. So I think I should stop at this stage. These are some of our observations and reflection and some study work in the positive psychology and yoga. Yoga is positive psychology in the most possible, richest form. We need to embrace it in that way. And as a scholar, we can also pursue our research using this angle. So thanks very much once again to the Indica Academy and Kavi Kulguru Kalidas University for organizing this and giving me opportunity to present the work which our group has conducted in last 5 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Can we have some questions?
Yes, sure.
If anyone has any question, they can raise their hand. Anjore Dikshit, ma'am, you can ask. Please unmute and ask.
Good evening, Ashish ji. Namaste. Is my voice audible?
You are not audible, Anjore ji.
Be little loud, Anjali.
Yeah, it's Anjor Dikshit. Yeah.
Yeah, Anjali.
Namaste. Thank you, Ashish ji, for the wonderful session. My question is concerning the contemporary times, like you have conducted the study and all. So there, I would like to understand your insight about the connection of yogic sciences with the behavioral science, since it is directly related to psychology. So, what would you, what perspective or what approach should be from a person studying the yogic sciences for the behavioral science? I mean, from yogic sciences to the behavioral science.
Yeah, so the yogic science and behavioral science are connected by, it can be examined, they are connected, means the Maitri Karuna Mudita is a behavior. Chitta Prasad is as much a behavior as it is experience. When you experience the deeper, when you experience when you have even the glimpse of the samadhi, even the asampragyat samadhi, or some of the very basic, the first level of the glimpse of oneness, our behavior changes. So there's no doubt about it. The yam and niyam are as much as like a self-reflection point as they are behavior. So aste is the behavior, aparigraha is the behavior, satya, brahmacharya, all these are behaviors. So the yoga result into positive behavior, there is no doubt about it. The question is how, as a researcher, we can approach this whole subject.
Yes.
My submission is that behavior and yoga practices are connected through psychological processes. So we need, when we are we are studying the behavior, we need to identify the relevant psychological or social process. The recent work, which is primarily conducted by another PhD student, PhD scholar of mine, Aditya Agrawalji, he is looking at organizational healing and yoga as a method of organizational healing.
Okay.
And so we can look at the psychological process or social process to make it a scientific study, because in the science it is not only sufficient to demonstrate that these two things are varying together. There is a covariance in some form of behavior and yogic practices. This is not a great science. For something to be rigorously scientific, we need to also decipher the psychological or social process behind it. So we need to include these things in our research, and if we can examine all the three things, psychological process along with yoga practice and behavior, that can be a research which journals will be interested to publish, which the researchers will be interested to give attention to.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. So we are seeing no more questions actually now.
There are a few questions in the chat box.
In the chat box, yes.
So I can take.
Yeah. What is the role and importance of sankalpa resolution in daily yoga practice?
That is very, very important, and this is in fact a good research area to see, because it is found in many studies in the art of living and many other studies that large number of people attend the program, but not very, but many of the people are they do not continue and they drop the practice. So that is the that situation occurs because of the weak sankalp. So so sankalp is very important. Abhyas and vairagya, I think at the source of abhyas and vairagya is the sankalp, our deep intention. So it has a very important role. Yoga practice in itself can help in strengthening sankalp. In the Bihar School of Yoga, in Munger, the gurus of the Bihar School of Yoga, they have developed a protocol for Yoga Nidra that is available on the internet, YouTube. In the Yoga Nidra, and I think it is not only in Bihar School of Yoga, but in the many gurus follow this practice of during the Yoga Nidra, before kind of just slipping into that, the gurus ask us to make some Shubha Sankalp. Because when we make Shubh Sankalp at that state of Chitta, the probability of it getting percolate down to our subconscious mind and eventually become part of our behavior is very high. So for the yoga practice, Sankalp is important, and yoga practice can help in strengthening the Sankalp. Not only Sankalp about conducting the practice, but also Sankalp about other things in life. Can you please explain more about role of researcher in accordance with the subject? A role of researcher is very important because particularly in the field of mindfulness and yoga, if you wish to conduct research, it is best, it is rather, in my understanding, it is essential. So all my PhD scholars who are working in the yoga have to practice yoga, because we can't understand these things without having some experience. My experience might be different than your experience. I can follow a different protocol. You can follow a different protocol. That is fine. But we need to have the experiential basis. And for that, a researcher also has to carry out his own practice. Someone has asked about the journals. Any Scopus listed journals can be considered for the research and for reference. Then there is a question about the protocol. Protocol means the procedure, because whenever you are conducting yoga practice, different gurus and different masters can follow different process. First you do this asana or that asana, and then which pranayama you do first or second, and how much time. So this the whole process of practice is called protocol. Dr. Hemji's hand is up, but it is already 8 o'clock. So yeah, Mithilesh ji, please decide.
Sir, good evening, and thank you so much, Ashish ji, for the wonderful session. My question was, when Patanjali Yoga Sutra, they say, Vidarka Badane Pratipaksha Bhavanam.
Yeah.
Is it, one way directly related to transforming your vocabulary so that you can see the positive side of life?
It is not only transforming vocabulary, but vocabulary might be part of the Pratipaksha Bhavana, but as the word says, Pratipaksha Bhavana, in my understanding, is actually looking at other way. So my indriyas are going outward, and now I have to look at the other way. The other way is the interiority. So instead of looking at things outside, seeking joy outside, let me seek the joy inside. That is the essence of Pratipaksha Bhavana. For that, I need to think opposite of Bhog, senses, 5 senses, instead of thinking about them as an outside, a source of their source being outside. We need to think and have the kind of effort to experience that within. So it is slightly vocabulary, but it is more like seeking the solace and joy intrinsically. That is my understanding of Pratipaksha Bhavana.
Yes. So here we can conclude with the first session. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashish Pandey, sir. It was indeed a very wonderful and informative session. You explained various concepts related to Indian psychology, mainly yogic psychology, in relation with the modern psychology also. You explained various concepts like Garbha Sanskar, physical and mental overall development. You very wonderfully explained the concept of positive governance, what can be the further aspects of that. and various connections between yogic psychology and modern psychology. Very wonderfully, you explained the limitations also of modern psychology and how yoga psychology can fill in there. So thank you very much once again, Dr. Ashish Pandey sir, and we really look forward to hear from you once again in the upcoming initiatives. Thank you very much, sir. So we will move on with our next session. Our next guest speaker has just joined, Mr. Parikshiti Maiskurkar sir. We welcome you, sir. Can you hear me, sir? Yeah. So just yeah, before this session, I would just like to introduce our next guest speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Parikshiti Maiskurkar sir. He has just joined us. Mr. Parikshiti Maiskurkar sir is currently working as an academician at Yoga Vidya Gurukul Nasik. Yoga Vidya Gurukul Nasik is a very sought after yoga institute in India as well as abroad. He is playing a very important role as a board of members there. And he also conducts his own meditation and yoga philosophy based workshops and retreats around the globe also. He regularly conducts sessions on meditation, yoga and consciousness. And I myself have got a very wonderful insights about relation between modern science and Indian spiritual yogic philosophy from him during his one of sessions on quantum consciousness. He has done his master's in engineering physics from Monash University, Australia. And after that, he started handling various activities of Yoga Vidya Gurukul's overseas campuses. And he has also worked as a visiting scientist with a neuroimaging group at Howard Florey Institute of Medical and Experimental Psychology. There he worked on various diagnostic modalities and techniques used for neurological, psychological, physiological, brain imaging processes. And he did a lot of meditation related research there. And he also ran pro bono meditation and relaxation sessions there. He has also worked as a visiting scientist at University of Melbourne. So with such a vast knowledge and experience, Mr. Parikshiti Maiskurkar sir is working in the field of yoga. So let's try to gain as much as from him during this session. So very much glad to have you here, sir. And I would request now you please start with your session.
Hari Om and Namaste everybody. Thank you, Mithilesh. So today's topic is quantum consciousness, but actually I would like it to be as quantum consciousness and its relation or similarity with the yoga philosophy and the wisdom developed by great sages. This lecture was scheduled just 3 days ago, and unfortunately my laptop has crashed. So at this stage, I don't have transferences or slides ready, so it will be just talking to you. And as it is, quantum physics is a very tedious subject, so I will try to keep things on the ground level. I will not drag you all to too much physics, quantum physics, and I will try to make it more fun for you. And after a long gap, I'm conducting this lecture because due to lockdown, there were no courses running or all courses were online. So this lecture was not part of the regular courses. So yeah, after a gap of say a year and a half, I'm conducting this lecture. So quantum consciousness. First off, before going to that, let me explain in brief what is quantum physics for those who don't have university level physics knowledge or those who haven't studied physics at the university level. In early 20th century, scientists, they started finding that quite a lot of scientific experiments were not able to get explanations or proper results using Newtonian mechanics rules, particularly for the experiments in which speed of the light was involved. So they started finding for new sets of laws. And then development of quantum physics took place. Then there was a Copenhagen summit where they accepted laws of quantum physics as new laws for explaining various scientific results they were getting by doing experiments. So then they started getting quite a good explanation for various results they used to get while doing research. And then scientists like Amit Goswami is a professor of quantum physics at University of Oregon. He started thinking about using, he and there was other scientists as well, but for me, he is my role model. He started thinking, applying those rules to human conscious experiences. And then steadily, they got wonderful success in analyzing and explaining various human experiences. So basically, they thought that materialistic school of thoughts in which it is assumed that conglomerates, various conglomerates form atoms, atoms form molecules, molecules form our nerve cells form our brain, and our consciousness is the epiphenomena of the brain. But this school of quantum consciousness, it considers that, okay, yes, we experience consciousness through brain, but there is something which is non-material within us. And that non-material thing has created everything. And yoga philosophy talks about it, about this non-material thing in terms of Atma and Paramatma. So how and what to do to explain these various human experiences and scientific results which they were getting by doing experiments. So they used some postulates. The first postulate is tangled hierarchy. The meaning of tangled hierarchy means a system in which object and subject both are coexisting. And if you ask me, the entire yoga philosophy is based on this tangled hierarchy. What is the origin of term yoga? It originates from yuja, union. Union of what? Union of Jiva and Shiva. So this tangled hierarchy between Jiva and Shiva tells that there can't be Jiva without Shiva, and there can't be Shiva without Jiva. They both exist together. So they are tied by this tangled hierarchy, or they coexist. And in our daily life, our memory and perception, they are tied by this tangled hierarchy. Second postulate is non-locality. Now, what I am doing with you is called as local communication. My vocal cord is emitting sound vibrations. Those through microphone are going to the server, and the server is sending those to your devices, and then you are listening to me. So this entire process involves exchange of energy. But because of non-material part of our own, we can communicate to each other on soul-to-soul level. And that communication is called as non-local communication. And there are plenty of examples of this non-local communication. Those who are here from Maharashtra, they know story of great sage Jnaneshwar. Once Jnaneshwar was challenged that his revered God Vitthal, or his supreme soul, to whom he used to consider everything, if he exists everywhere. And he said, yes, he does. So then he was challenged, if your Vitthal exists everywhere, whether Vitthal exists in a buffalo. Then he said, yes. Then he was asked question whether this buffalo can sing verses from Veda. He said, yes, why not? And then he went to that buffalo, he put his hand on the forehead of that buffalo, and that buffalo started enchanting verses from Vedas. It can be a myth, but quantum consciousness says, yes, on one level of our awareness, we are connected to each other, and we try to explore it, then there can be soul-to-soul communication happening between us and everything around. And then using this non-locality explained by Professor Amit Goswami, Hakububinger, a researcher from Mexico University, he tried it on 2 human subjects. He told them to withhold a resolution on their mind or to remain stuck to a thought that both of the subjects are going to communicate to each other on soul-to-soul level. And then they were asked to meditate together, and then they were separated in Faraday chambers where there were no external communication waves were able to penetrate. And one of them was shown some flashes. And using electroencephalography, activity of his visual cortex was checked. And another one was asked just to meditate on a thought that he is getting connected, or he is connected on soul-to-soul level with that other subject. And after that, when they checked results, they found similar visual cortex activity in the both subjects. Means without any communication waves or without any energy, both subjects were connected to each other on the soul-to-soul level. And then they repeated this experiment, and every time they got success. If you refer to any interview of Professor Amit Goswami, you will be able to get more information about it. But to me, this experiment proved or make me accept this fact that yes, there can be something like soul-to-soul communication. And what stories I heard from my childhood about Jnaneshwar or others yogis doing this kind of wonders, those can be easily, not easily, but of course, after putting efforts, can be our own abilities. A few years ago, I had a chance to work as a mentor for advisor of one of the Australian Olympic teams. And that time we tried to explore this phenomenon. But unfortunately for the player for whom we were trying this was dropped out because of the physical inabilities or some physical problems, and we were not able to get results. But maybe in near future, we will once again will try to explore this ability for doing some wonderful group activity. Second is discontinuous movement of consciousness. So once again, I can say this example of Sage Jnaneshwar, that male buffalo was normal buffalo before getting in touch with the Sage Jnaneshwar. But after, because of the process of Shaktipat, that buffalo's consciousness was pushed to the very high sublime level. So whether it is possible for normal human beings, then lots of examples started coming to me. And the most striking examples, two examples I can talk about. These days, we all have Facebook and iPhones at our disposal. But the story starts like this. One jobless fellow was not sure about to do what with his life. And someone told him to go to India. Maybe he will get some, inspiration. And then that fellow went to shrine of one of the great yogis. He went to Kaichidam near Nainital. And he visited shrine of Nim Karori Baba. And after that, he went back to his country. A huge wave of inspiration struck to him. And that jobless fellow became Steve Jobs. Reading his autobiography, another young fellow from America went to same shrine. He also got inspired from that visit. And after that, he started with Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. So these kind of experiences are still prevailing, that consciousness, which is at a lower stage, or creativity at a lower level, can go to very significant high level. And this is what is called as giant leap of consciousness. So this concept from quantum consciousness can be experienced in normal human life. But whether it is easily possible for everybody, I also went to Kaichidam, but nothing has happened with me yet. So why it happens with some people? The reason is very simple, as Lord Krishna has said, Karma Yoga. These kind of experiences can happen with only those selective who have past storage of past good karmas. Because Einstein the Great has used to say, no one is playing game of chess. In this life, whatever circumstances we pass through, whatever experiences we get, it has connections to the past. So no one is destiny's favorite child and no one is cursed here. Whatever happens with us, whatever circumstances we pass through, are because of our own karmas. Now, let's talk about some creative experiences or psychic powers. Parapsychologists, those who work on these kind of things, they term all creative experiences as aha experiences. Means, oh, how this idea never popped in my mind previously. Oh, all of a sudden this happened. So most of our creative experiences are from that category, aha. And these kind of creative experiences are also can be explained on the basis of this discontinuous movement of consciousness, that suddenly a wave of inspiration comes, it strikes to mind, and then some creative experience takes place. And it happens with some people by meeting someone or going to some place or like visiting some great yogi's shrine, or just happens naturally. Those who are from Maharashtra, they know Gadi Madgulkar. His ultimate creation, Gita Ramayana, he has mentioned somewhere in his interview. He went to his native place, and there was nice farm, and there was a well. He had a nice bath, and it was a nice sunny morning. He thought to relax and to meditate for some time. And in that process, he went in a deep state of relaxation. And then he felt a huge light entering in his head. And he came out of that state. And then he thought, now something is going to happen. I'm going to create something which will be exceptionally well. And after that, his very famous creation, Geet Ramayana, happened. So these are sort of aha effects. And if you think of any creative artist, every creative artist has a span of creation. And after a certain time, they can't go back to that creative era. Amongst four of Beatles, Sir Paul McCartney is still alive, but he can't go back to that era when Beatles were considered as the god. Because all these experiences we can explain on the basis of Karma Yoga. Though those can happen with us as long as we have good storage of good karmas, but it's like a bank balance. You go on spending it without adding anything. At one point, it will hurt. It will hit the lowest level. So this is about the giant leap of consciousness. Now, coming to non-locality. If you ask any quantum physicist, if an electron is in front of you at this instance, where it can be at the next instance. And the quantum mechanic, a physicist who has developed understanding of quantum physics will say that electron at the next moment can be anywhere in the universe. So can this non-locality property be applied to the wonders sages have shown, or some extraordinary abilities they have demonstrated? We have plenty of examples that yogis, they physically appeared simultaneously at different places. In my own studying, one example is of Swami Pravanananda. Yogananda, in his autobiography of Yogi, has clearly mentioned that Swami Pravanananda used to exist in physical form at two different places. In Maharashtra, we have great tradition of enchanting or reading Guru Charitra. And in Guru Charitra, there is a story of Sri Nrsimha Saraswati. Nrsimha Saraswati was invited by his disciples, 7 disciples, to visit their home at the time of Diwali on auspicious occasion of Lakshmi Pujan. So they were always in his Gurukul for celebrating Diwali. They were supposed to go to their home. They celebrated Diwali, and Nrsimha Saraswati kept his promise. And when they came back to Gurukul, all of them, they started saying, yes, Guru came to my home at the time of Lakshmi Pujan. And when everybody was saying like this, they were wondering that how it was possible. And then they went to Nrsimha Saraswati. Then he said, I promised you, I kept my promise. So this is what is non-locality, that ability of yogis to exist simultaneously in a physical form at various places. So maybe they had this ability like an electron to manifest at various places. Now coming to Assam Prajnap Samadhi. According to sage Patanjali, first when yogis they put efforts, they steadily go to the higher levels of their meditative practices, and then they can go to state of samadhi. So first is savikalpa, second one is asam prajna, and third one is nirvikalpa. So this asam prajna and nirvikalpa he has mentioned as nirbija samadhi, means when yogi go in that state, they don't come back in the physical form. Now, with this state of samadhi, Swami Shivananda has elaborated more. He said that before going to nirvij, yogis can be in two forms or two levels of experiences. One is videhi and second one is prakruti laya. And both of them, they need to work. And then they go to the stage of bhava pratyay. And after that, bhava pratyay, they steadily go to nirvija state. So, in this state, those yogis who are in videhi state, they wander around universe in sukshma deha or in subtle body. And quantum consciousness principles have accepted this existence of subtle body. In yoga philosophy, our each and every cell is made of 5 domains: annamaya kosh, pranamaya kosh, manomaya kosh, vijnanamaya kosh, and anandamaya kosh. In quantum consciousness, they have 4 koshas: physical body, vital body, mental body, and supramental body. So supramental body can be analogous to Vijnanmaya and Anandamaya Kosh. Physical body is Annamaya and Vayumaya Kosh, certain extent of Vayumaya Kosh. Astral body is our various pranas, are similar to various pranas. And mental body to Manomaya Kosh. Now, coming to the state of, once again, samadhi, those yogis who are in videhi state, they can be at the level of astral body. By doing their practices, they can be in the level of astral and mental body, or physical, mental body. So now, when yogis, they perform these kind of miracles, whether quantum consciousness is giving validation to these wonders or these extra human abilities. So I can say yes, quantum consciousness or school of quantum consciousness thoughts can be giving explanation or validation to these wonderful phenomena. Now coming to some wonderful experiments which can be explained that yes, there can be a state of Assam Prajnap. Massachusetts people were provided by some monks who were at par and ability to meditate with Dalai Lama himself. I have reference of this experiment that these monks were asked to meditate, and after certain duration of their meditation, their brains were scanned using technique called as PET, positron emission tomography. In this technique, a radioactive dye is injected in the vein, and with the stream of blood, that dye goes to the heart. From heart, it is pumped to the lungs along with blood, and then after getting oxygenated, it once again comes back to the heart, and then it is pumped everywhere. So on screen, scientists can see travel of the radioactive dye. And after certain duration of meditation, these scientists were astonished to see that thalamus of the brain stopped sending blood to the brain. Means they saw no blood circulating in the brain. For those who don't have idea about brain structure, our brain has a stem. It is called as thalamus. On the top of thalamus, there is just a little bit below. There is hypothalamus, little bit on the lower side, which is called as gate of the brain, from where distribution of information takes place. As hypothalamus stopped sending signals, one by one, all lobes of brain stopped receiving blood, and there were no traces of any activity in the brain. So it means their brains were totally cut off from the signals. And in this state, those monks were in the state in which they were not having awareness of the physical body. Their awareness was oscillating at totally different level. And that time, one can say that, yeah, it is quite similar to the state of Videhi. Means there was no gross awareness of the physical body. Another fantastic, not application, but ethos adopted by quantum consciousness school of thought is our consciousness is uniform. It resides in this frame of time and space, and it can be out of the frame of time and space. So, what makes us feeling of this separation? And quantum physicists, they are saying we feel this separation or existence because of the quantum gravity of the planets. And then our consciousness gets trapped in this body and we feel this separation. And when we work towards it, when we work towards the goal of self-realization, steadily, we can get rid of these layers of illusion or layers of ignorance. For those who are from Maharashtra state, Ramdas Swami, in his treatise, Atmaram has clearly mentioned in Maya Nirupan, he has clearly mentioned that consciousness or Atmaram resides in the frame of Brahmanda and out of it as well. And I have tried to explore this phenomenon in Upanishad. In Brihadaranya Upanishad, Yajnavalkya and Maitri conversation has said the same thing, that consciousness is all pervading. Same is Chandogya Upanishad. And same is according to the Advaita Vedanta of Adya Shankaracharya. Consciousness is all pervading, it is continuum. And that's why in yoga philosophy, Guru's prayer, which is really very meaningful, Brahmanandam Paramasukadam, Kevalam Jnanamurti, Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrusham, Tattvamasya Laksham. Tattvamasya Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam, Sarvadi Sakshibhutam, Bhavatitam Triguna Sadgurum Tam Namami. How is this Sadguru? Brahmananda. He is the one who is leading to eternal bliss. Paramasukadam, extreme bliss. Paramasukadam, Kevalam Jnanamurti, the one who is full with wisdom. Dvandvatitam, the one who has gone beyond this duality. Because once you enter that domain of continuum, you are universal and you are out of universe as well. Kevalam Jnanamurti, you are full with wisdom. Dvandvatitam, the one who has gone beyond duality. Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrusham, the one who has occupied entire space and out of it. Gagana Sadrusham Tattvamasya Lakshitam, Tattvamasi. You are the same. You are that universal principle of creation. And same thing, Tattvamasi, has been elaborated by one of the founders, Nobel Prize winner of quantum physics, Erwin Schrödinger, in his book, My Worldview. It's originally in German. This is the English translated name. He has totally supported this concept of Tattvamasi. In Ganesh Atharvashirsha also we have same line, Tamaya Protection Tattvamasi. So that is Tattvamasi Lakshitam. That means one who leads us to this goal of experiencing Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi Laksham Ekam Nityam, the one who is in union, is unique. Nityam, always existing. Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam, the one who has no dirt attached. All dirt or material things are within frame of time and space. But beyond that, there is no dirt. There is no mind. You are, or gurus are in continuum. So no material desires, no dirt. Nityam Vimalam Achalam. All vibrations, perturbations are within frame of time and space. Out of that, it is steadfast and achala. Sarvadi Sakshibhutam. Once you are out of time and space, you can neutrally observe things happening in the universe. So you can know past, you can know present, you can know future. Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam. So you witness everything. Bhavatitam, Bhava is emotions. So when you are in the mindless state, there are no emotions. Triguna Rahitam, according to yoga philosophy, Sattva, Raja, Tama, gunas have created this creation. But when you are out of this frame of time and space, you are beyond that. Sadgurum Tam Naman. So I pay respect to the Sadguru who has all these abilities and qualities. So quantum consciousness, school of quantum consciousness accepts this thought of great sages that yes, everything is in unison. And Adi Shankaracharya used to say, Brahman Satya Jagat Mithya. Whatever we are experiencing using our five sense organs is illusionary experience. And whatever experiences consciousness experiences in a unique form, those are true. And say Atma, he has said all experiences beyond Maya or illusion are true, but whatever experiences we are experiencing using our five sense organs, those are illusionary. And our true form is Sat Chidananda. Sat means true, Chid means eternal, and Anand means bliss. And one can explain this non-dualistic philosophy on the basis of illusionary experiences. Or in simple words, I can say reality changes per our perception. So when our perception changes, things around us, those do change. And this phenomenon has been proved in the month of February, at one of the laboratories in Israel, where they observe a beam of electrons. And when observers thought that these electrons are a particle, they started experiencing that they are particles. But when they changed their thoughts that it is the beam of light, they were seeing nice interference pattern on the screen. Or otherwise, when they thought that it is a particle, they were able to see particles traveling through a slit. So that means reality changes per our perception, and that proves that how Adi Shankaracharya was precise. Brahman Satya Jagat Mithya. Things in front or things which we experience using sense organs, those are illusionary. And same principle is accepted, as I said previously, by quantum consciousness. Quantum consciousness says that we all come from one source of creation. We all are in unison, just that we are experiencing ourselves subjectively. So when consciousness we experience subjectively, we fall in the trap of this pseudo-ego. And when we try to work towards more sublime experiences, we can go there. Now coming to our daily life things or our Ashtanga Yoga philosophy. First two dimensions of Ashtanga Yoga are yamas and niyamas. After that comes asana, then pranayam, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. But first, Sage Patanjali has suggested us to have lifestyle with yamas and niyamas. Those are for making us human beings with refined qualities and disciplined lifestyle. Professor Goswami has talked about this virtuous life in terms of quantum activism. So what is that activism? That activism is to adopt a lifestyle by following the principle of non-locality. At one sublime level of our existence, we all are one or in unison. We all are in unison, not just with each other, but with the entire creation, animals, Mother Nature. And when we will follow a disciplined lifestyle, naturally, our life quality will increase. So quantum activism is this, to convey this message that whatever Sage Patanjali has suggested, whatever Lord Buddha has suggested by the means of metta ethos. Metta ethos are Daya Kshama Shanti, compassion, forgiveness, and peace. Sage Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, Yoga, Buddha's Panchashil, all these are accepted by quantum consciousness as noble ethos or way of the lifestyle. And as we will adopt this lifestyle steadily, we will realize that whatever abilities we think as supernatural, we all have that with us, because we all are connected with the universal principle of creation by tangled hierarchy. We all are born with all those qualities, just that our pseudo-consciousness or the illusions which we have surrounded us with are making us feeling of this separation. So yeah, that's all I can say, that quantum consciousness, school of quantum consciousness, is very much parallel with the great yoga philosophy. And today's science is on the verge, or today's experiments with consciousness are on the verge to accept yoga philosophy or philosophy of Advaita Vedanta as the key to solve quite a lot scientific puzzles and to explain various things. Science, I definitely appreciate. It's an intellectual effort. It takes its own time, and science is humble. If one set of laws are not applicable, they are ready to accept others. So definitely, today's science is leading towards Antaranga Yoga, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi, and definitely if we all work together by having nice self-respect and confidence, we can use these things, this wisdom developed by great sages or by yoga philosophy. Once again, we can be in a leading role as far as research is concerned, as far as becoming Vishwa Guru, as said by our beloved Prime Minister Modi ji. Definitely we can do that. Unfortunately for us, now the tide is in our favor. Outside also, out of India also, they are asking more and more people to bring things from yoga philosophy and from ancient wisdom to the stream of modern science by doing experiment. Yes, we should accept that opportunity. We should not feel inferior about things others are saying, that, yeah, you have lots of myths and you are superstitious. I have come across these kind of comments in the Western world every now and then. But using yoga philosophy, I have tried to refute. So thanks a lot for listening to me, and sorry for the interruptions in between. I apologize. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm ready to take questions.
Yeah. So those are having questions, they can raise their hands. Yes, Anjorji, you can unmute and ask. Or you can also put your question in chat box.
Yeah, that's.
Anjorji, you can ask.
Okay.
And if due to time constraint, if you can't, I will give my email ID. Please feel free to send me email.
Yeah, sure.
Namaste Parikshit ji. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. I wanted to ask, is my voice audible clearly?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to request, not ask basically, would you put some light on the 5 elements, that the Pancha Tattva that we say, and their connection to the quantum consciousness?
As I said, that you are asking about Panchakoshas or Panchamahabhutas. I beg your pardon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Anjorji, you can unmute.
Yeah, the Panchamahabhuta.
Panchamahabhuta.
Yeah.
See, it is all about creations. That first there was fire, then it created gases, then it created fire created water, water created gases, then there was hang on, sorry. Okay, first there was nothing, then there was Om, sound energy was created. That energy created further things, and entire creation happened. Okay? So earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So ether, then gases, those created friction, then fire was generated, which generated water, and then solidified particles like earth. So this entire creation, process of creation, has been accepted by quantum consciousness as well, because once they accepted continuum, they have accepted this process of creation. Modern science talks about it in terms of Big Bang, and as there is no particular theory which is sort of defeating this Big Bang at this stage, they are ready to accept till further more convincing theory comes forward. But I will talk about this in terms of Bhagavad-Gita. And one of the scientists, Roger Penrose, he himself is members of the group of scientists who have put forth this Big Bang. He, couple of years ago, if he was asked what was before Big Bang, and he said, that time I would have said it is a meaningless question. But now he says that after some billion years, this creation will end, it will come to an end, and this end, or this such collapsed time and space, will create background for next Big Bang. And he said this Big Bang is a cyclic process. And now Bhagavan Sri Krishna has talked about this phenomena in Bhagavad-Gita. He has said, I create this universe at my will, and ultimately it ends up in me. And how precisely our philosophy has term the thing in which it ends as Krishna Vivar. So now same thing has been accepted by Roger Penrose, that it is a cyclic process. And quantum consciousness, if you ask me, doesn't say specifically about these 5 principles of creation. So to my best of the knowledge, they have accepted other theories of creation. Perhaps my reading is not to that depth. Others might be knowing the answer. But I thought, okay, it's better to explain that connection between modern science with Bhagavad-Gita. Hope I have tried my level best to answer your question. Any more questions?
Yeah, any more questions? They can raise your hand or put it in chat box. Sir, one person was asking about any books related to these topics.
You know, if you are interested, see, I am an academic, and in Australia we have excellent library facilities. So I keep on bumping books and journals every now and then. But if you want to develop yourself in quantum consciousness area, Professor Amit Goswami, just Google for it. Ample of material he has posted on the webs, his interviews, his own website, and quite a lot of information he has, placed us for free. So yeah, and if you specifically want to read about books, then I will suggest you to read Erwin Schrodinger's book, My Worldview. Its English translated versions are easily available. Another book, Stephen Hawking's Universe in Nutshell. That was really very fascinating and informative. And try to read Einstein's thoughts about creation. Though Einstein was not happy with the development of quantum physics, but yeah, his views are parallel to Bhagavad-Gita.
Yeah. Yes, I see no more questions now.
Okay, and Mithilesh, I will request you to forward my email ID to.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
Shall I type it here?
Yeah, you can send it in the chat box also.
Okay.
Or else you can give me WhatsApp also, and I will circulate on the group.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So no more questions.
Yeah. Yes. So here we can conclude. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. We can conclude with our second session of today. So thank you very much, Parikshiti Mesfurkar sir, for your wonderful session. You really dwelled upon very wonderful concepts and terms related to quantum consciousness and yogic philosophy. Very important concepts you talked upon, like triangular hierarchy, how one can have creative experiences, and can there be any relation between these experiences and spiritual philosophy? We talked about giant leap of consciousness, about local and non-local communication. That's were very astonishingly wonderful concepts. We talked about Videhi Avastha, Sampradaya, and Samadhi, and their relation with quantum consciousness. So thank you very much once again, sir, for your wonderful and very, very informative session. And looking forward to your upcoming sessions also. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks. It was a great pleasure, and thanks for inviting me and to meet with such a wonderful group of people.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. Hari Om Tat Sat.
Yeah. So just reminding you, all of you, about upcoming tomorrow's sessions. So tomorrow also we have 2 sessions. I will just update you on that. Give me a minute. Yes, as you can see on the screen, tomorrow we have again 2 sessions. By 7 p.m. first session will be conducted by Smita Milia Madam. She is the program director at Swami Vivekananda Yoga Anusandhan Sanstha at USA. And second session will be conducted by researcher duo, young researchers there, Vijay Sarde and Manish Maheshwari from Indic Academy. They will be talking on history and archaeology of yoga. So all of you are requested to join tomorrow also on time for 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. session. So that was about tomorrow. And now we will conclude with the Shanti Mantra. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhutrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste and thank you all for joining. And thank you Parikshit sir.
थँक्स. मिथिलेश जी, मला जरा मेसेजेस वाचायचे आहेत, तर मी थोडा नंतर हे होतो.
Sure sir, sure.
थँक्यू.
Yeah, thank you. So all of you participants, you can leave the meeting.